It is now time to move on to our next session, which is a plenary session. The next speaker is someone who brings in over 20 years of technology experience to Tricentis. He founded Tricentis in 2008 as a testing consultancy and laid the cornerstone for the development of enterprise software testing product, Tosca Test Suite. Today, he is responsible for global product management, research and development, and delivery of product-related support and services to customers. Please help me welcome founder and CPO Tricentis, Mr. Wolfgang PLATZ. With a big round of applause. He'll be speaking on sourcing testing services in a DevOps world. Mr. Wolfgang PLATZ.
So hello everybody, thanks for the introduction. You've already learned I'm here from Vienna, Austria. It's my pleasure to be here. I've been with Stepping conferences several times now, and I see that kind of a personal agenda to come to India again and again, because this is actually the heart of testing from my perspective. And what I would like to share with you guys today is sourcing of testing services, because I think that's a very relevant topic when it comes to all this innovation that's going on. What about all the test sourcing? And you're aware of the stats. There's like 500,000 of people who are test professionals here in India, which makes up like 50% of the world number of test professionals. So actually India is the heart where you need to talk about these things. Just to give you an overview of who we are, company Tricentis, if you have not heard about us, coming from Central Europe, the blue marks here spot where we have offices. Proud of this here. This is right in Pune. We have an office, and we are expanding heavily here in India. We're a global company, and as you've heard, we see ourselves as a product company dealing with the product Tosca Test Suite. Just one further slide on the company. This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant from last year, December, where you see us positioned as a leader. I have already seen the preview of the 2016. There you will see us even further up north and further down to the right. It's only 3 of the leaders remaining, so we're very proud of that development. Why do we get up? Because whenever enterprises want to go the automation path, there's the recommendation from Gartner, then talk to us, okay? So, having said that, let's jump right into the topic. And I'm very stringent with what you have heard before. We are going to times of rapid change. There's some interesting stats here that out of the Fortune 500 countries, the life expectancy has gone down dramatically. And this is not over. It's still continuing. The decline is still going on, and the reason for that has also been pointed out today several times. The reason is the digital disruption. And what we see is that when it comes to digital disruption, there is only 2 options. You either disrupt or you will be disrupted. And as a matter of fact, there is no common ground in the middle. What that tells us is that you must not rest. You fundamentally decide either you're going to be disrupted or you will disrupt. And what it tells us regarding testing services is that the traditional manual testing is going to be gone. And if I talk to my GSI friends, and we have a lot of partners in the GSI space, today it seems that they make more than 80% of the revenue still out of manual testing. This is all going to be gone. So the question is, what is going to happen and where should you move? So first of all, number 1, traditional manual testing dies. Then the testing centers of excellence that we see out of there today that have been built will not fulfill the needs of the future. We need to get to different organization. But from my perspective, we will see sourcing survive. It's not that the sourcing is going to go away completely. So, coming to test automation, let me ask you a question. From your personal experience, until today, test automation, has it been a success story? Has it been so? Or has it been a failure? What would you say? Number one, success story. Raise your hands, please. 10, okay, that's okay. So? I would say that's 100. How about the failure? You don't admit it? Come on. I don't believe you. You don't admit it? Okay, so let's see the stats. 18%, that's overall stats globally. 18% of testing is done automatically today. This is an overall stats. When we go down to enterprises, what's going to happen with this number? Is it going to increase or go down? What do you think? Go down, you're right. 8%, okay? When it comes to enterprises. Let me tell you, I've seen a lot of automated test suites now. A lot. And you've heard that in former days when you were a QTP, you were king, okay? I've seen a lot of them. And when I see these 8%, I need to ask you one question. Really? Really? I've been with one of the largest banks here on the planet yesterday. And the lady who's responsible for QA, she told me, hey, you know what? I have this suspect that all these QTP things, we would be as productive if we would do it manual, you know? So much maintenance involved. And then she said, and you know what? I think that people are maintaining it because they love it. Kind of, the scripting, right? But is it really productive? So, what I think is the test automation as we have seen it today, it sucks. Why is that the case? Let's have a look at application functionality, okay? Let's assume this cloud is the full applications functionality. What we now see is that when people start automation, they would pick the use cases, okay, and they would start with the most important test case per use case. These little symbols shall represent that, which is a good idea, okay? But see what happens then, okay? 3 months later, the boss would come up and would show up with the team and would say, hey guys, how are you doing with your automation? What have you got? And they're going to say, we've built a lot of automation, now we've come up with a framework, you know. And he said, so how many test cases have you automated? And they say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he says, what? Are you crazy? 10 test cases in 3 months? That can't be the answer. Okay, so these guys sit down and say, okay, no, we're gonna speed this up now, right? We're gonna be faster. It's just the start, okay? We're gonna be so much faster. So what's gonna happen now is they pick a few more test cases, try to automate them, but they find out, ooh, they're still cumbersome, right? We're never gonna get to the numbers our bosses want us to have, okay? So they find out, okay, there's only one thing you can do. We now come up with these nice data-driven tests, and we group the tests very, very close to the use cases, right? To get to large numbers. But we don't gain any additional coverage through this, right? So all of a sudden we have a large number of automated test cases, but where's the coverage? So what we're facing in general, when we have a look at automation, we see a lot of leaks and a lot of redundancies. This might be a pretty wallpaper down there, but it's not the right paper for automation. So that needs to change. It needs to change dramatically, and what you see is that manual testers today are a real burden to DevOps. They need to become way more productive, and when it comes to automation, we see still that this is a developer's discipline. And as per se, it excludes all the manual testers of today to become productive in test automation. And when we go in test automation, we see that most of that is UI-driven. So you've heard Rohit before, and I agree very much to what he said. UI is not going to be the dominant channel where you expose functionality in the future. UI is going to go down. Is it going to be zero UI? I mean, the term is the right one, right? It's not going to be zero UI, but UI is going to melt down. So what about automation? How is that going to look like? So, if you talk to a CIO, and it comes to automation, what they're going to tell you is this, and this is actually a study from Gartner. Say the number one complaint we have with our sourcing partners is that they cannot do automation. And you know, when I talk to the GSIs, the management, they all get it. Management, they have all got it. They know exactly what needs to be done. When you go deeper and talk to the teams, and when I say deeper, I mean down some hierarchy levels. Hierarchy levels, you hear me say that? Hierarchy levels. DevOps, hierarchy levels. Is that the right thing? Huh? When you go down some hierarchy levels, you find out that these people just want to follow instructions. That's it. So there seems to be kind of a break in the middle between the management layer that knows exactly what's going on. They know exactly about this, but the automation somehow doesn't happen. So the CIOs are really asking themselves, what are we going to do with our GSI partners now, right? You need to get to an incredibly different picture of automation. You need to get to not 20%, and we have been elaborating on this. It's not 20, it's not 8, it's even less. We need to get to 85% plus on automation. There is going to be some manual test remaining, but that's going to be all exploratory. Out of the remaining automation, you will have not the dominant channel through the UI anymore. Of course not, because UIs are going to vanish. You will have automation on the UI to some extent, but API testing in conjunction with service virtualization is really going to take over the picture. Any one of the manual testers doing an API test automation today? Anyone doing an API test automation today? Developers do, but testers don't. Everybody knows that this is going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. By 2021, and that's the stats, half of the manual testing will be gone. 5 years to go. So, when you talk to business testers, what is their complaint? We would like to do more on automation, but we do not have the right automation tools. This is from the World Quality Report 2016-17. It's very fresh. The number one complaint of business testers, we don't have the right tools. So, what is the challenge with the tools? As I said, it is a development discipline. It's all about code. This is a script from Selenium. Everybody needs to be acquainted with coding to do that stuff today. And that can't be the solution. Just see the stats, right? One of our GSI partners, 18,000 testers. Out of 18,000 testers, 16,000 manual testers. 1,800 can do scripting. 1,800 can do this, what is rolling down here to some extent. Are you going to get to 85% with that? Never. Right? So, don't waste your time with framework programming. It's not going to get you to where you want to be. You need to get to a different approach here. The script-based approach is not the future of testing when it comes to test automation. It needs to be something that can be read and educated by business people. We need to have an abstraction that makes business people productive in the space. We call it model-based automation. If you compare that today, as I've laid it out, like 90% of the staff are business testers. 10% of the staff are test automation scripters. This seems to be a pattern which is valid for all of our GSI partners. About that, okay? So, if this is the required level of automation that you see here, how far is the traditional scripting going to get you? Yes, you will implement some fancy framework, and that's going to lead to some extent of manual testing, former manual testers to be part of the game, okay? Some of them. But see where you need to go. This leap is only going to be possible when you change the game. You need to get away from the scripting idea, otherwise it's not going to happen. I've been talking about API because API is also so much relevant. We will have the future of testing not be focused on UI automation. So, any of our manual testers of today need to be able to also cope with the API testing. Why is that the case? Because API testing is so much more efficient. When you see API testing, it's 4 times as fast in setup, 6 times as fast in maintenance, and the execution is a factor 1,000 maybe. So, and one of the most prominent advantages is it is progressive. You do not need to have a stable UI in place in order to perform API testing, so we can do this way earlier in the process, right? It's a shift left that's going to happen when you switch to API testing. Why do people not do it? And let's be frank, testers don't do API testing today. It's developers who do that. Why is that the case? Let's compare a web application, this is an HTML document, with a web services call. They pretty much look the same, right, from the technology background. What is the difference? The fundamental difference is that the web service thing is to some kind dark to our manual testers, whereas for the web application, we have a user interface. And all of a sudden, we can act with it, right, as manual testers. So what is the need for a manual test, a former manual tester now be able to enter the space of API testing? We need to provide a sufficient user interface. The tooling you need to have for the future needs to provide a sufficient user interface in order to be able to do API testing. And this is what we provide, by the way. So that was enough on automation. Now let's go to test centers of excellence, the former organization that was so prominent. A lot of people wanted to do that. 4 years ago, 80% of the enterprises wanted to go there. But today, people find out that it's not the appropriate answer to testing anymore. Why is that the case? I mean, there has been good reason to come up with test centers of excellence, standards and governance. Governance is super, 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 super relevant on testing. And all of you who have gone into the agility have found out that the #1 challenge with agile teams is governance. Because they tend to build their own enterprises, their own little empires where they see themselves as the only performing bubble in the universe. Without governance, you lose control in enterprise agile. So TCOEs are a good idea, but there's significant pain points. They forgot to tell thing, meaning developers never are completing their information on testers. And the information comes late. So what are you going to do? There is only one solution to overcome that. We got to make them part of the teams. The testers need to be part of the agile teams, and that's not new, that's not my invention. That's a fact, okay? In addition to that, we will still require some organization aside, which helps the manual testers to perform in that teams. And if I say manual testers, I mean manual testers which are now also automation specialists. Because manual testing and automation specialists need to be the same. So we're going to see a different organization here. What we call it digital TCOEs. You will still have a slim center of excellence that sees itself as an enabler for the former manual testers now being automation specialists, which are part of the agile teams. This is the structure to go for. And if you have a look at how's the day going to look like for these testers then, you will see that exploratory testing is going to make up like 20% of what they do. Then they will deal with the designing of test cases. They will do test case design. It's not enough to just generate test cases intuitively anymore. You will do automation. And automation, in the effort, you will still invest a lot on UI testing. But when it comes to numbers of test cases, way more test cases will be executed through the API than through the UI. And last but not least, of course, you will deal with run and reporting. This is what we envision to be the spectrum of tasks for the testers within the agile teams in the future. Sourcing will survive. I'm absolutely convinced, but it requires a different culture. And I'm a true fan of the Spotify development culture thing. If you haven't seen that, I really recommend you to watch that on YouTube. It's great, like 15 minutes video. And it tells us about a necessity for high performance. And they break it down in 2 dimensions, autonomy and alignment. And they break it down into 4 sectors, low, high, and they give them names. This sector is anarchy, okay? This sector up here with high alignment but low autonomy is waterfall. This sector down here is creative chaos. No alignment, high autonomy. And the sector on the top with high alignment and high autonomy is the DevOps space, where we really need to go for. So, let me ask you, where are you today? What do you think your organization regarding the testing structure on the operational level is executing against today? Anarchy? How many of you think that? Nobody. I would agree. Creative chaos? At least 3 dare to raise their hand. Waterfall? And DevOps? Okay, so there are not too many people who have raised their hands now. So we actually had the by far most of you pointing to waterfall. And what I have seen personally with our GSI partners, I would agree to that. By far most of what we see today from an organizational perspective out there is still waterfall. And we need to get to a transition into DevOps. This is a transitioning culture. The Master of Ceremony said today, this is not about a task, but it's about a habit, something like this, right? It's a change in culture. And this is very relevant. So, when you get to that change of culture, then, and only then, I believe there is future for sourcing. And if you compare that with different topographies of systems, I don't know if you have seen this, systems of engagement versus systems of record, right? Systems of engagement are the consumer-oriented systems. Systems of record is the back ends. On the systems of engagement, it's going to be less. Like 30% that you can do in an off-site sourcing. On the systems of record, I still believe that like 70% can do on an off-site sourcing. On the systems of engagement, what we're going to see is that the sourcing is going to be more crowdsourcing flavored, right? Like we also have heard today. So crowdsourced testing is certainly going to be kind of the future of the progressive systems of engagement like testing. So my net to this is, yes, there is a future for sourcing. Number 1, traditional manual testing will die. Number 2, test centers of excellence need to change into digital test centers of excellence. Sourcing will survive. And there's a call to action also. Learn how to automate. There's no way around it. But don't go the path of framework programming. You're never going to get to the extent of productivity you need to get to. Support the idea of digital TCOEs. Don't stick to the TCOEs. And imbibe an agile culture. The cultural aspect, I think, is the biggest challenge. That's it. But one thing to go further, an announcement that I've been allowed to do here from the conference committee. We as Tricentis want to encourage our GSI partners to acquire more knowledge in what we're doing. And what we're doing with our Sweet Tosca is we're going for a big tournament. And this tournament goes beyond simple automation, it goes even into more challenging automation, and we wanted to really make that attractive. Meaning, the winner of that tournament is going to get to 1 week in Vienna. We're going to come up for everything. And we would like to invite one of you guys who wins that contest to Vienna to take part of Tricentis and the development spirit there. This automation challenge, and you see the link, is going on right now. Please come to our stall out there and see how you can register if you're interested. It would be a great pleasure. As of yet, we have 300 registrants, and my personal hope is when I get out here, it's at least 400. So I would love you to take part in this. Thank you.
So are you guys up for the Tosca tournament with Tricentis? Let's hear it with a big round of applause. for Wolfgang PLATZ. May I request Mr. Sanal Nair, Evangelist and Marketing Manager, step in.